channel.
You know what time it is, No Press fam? Welcome everyone to another episode of The Beatdown, the segment and channel where two worlds collide. I am your host, Class, and if you guys enjoyed this content, you know what you guys can do. You can share, you can like, or you can subscribe to our channel. Alright, now moving on. Well, not too long ago, James Gunn had announced that Metamorpho will be in the Superman Legacy, so that's exciting. And also on top of that, we recently just finished up Secret Invasion. Now, people had mixed review or mixed feelings about the show, and I'm also feeling that same way about it. But at the same time, there was a particular character looking forward to seeing, maybe not exactly what expected to certain people, but it was adapted nonetheless. So we're going to talk about these two particular characters today from the DC and Marvel realm. So I'm going to start things off by representing Marvel Comics, the Super Skrull.
The commander was wrong. You are dangerous.
Kirk, aka Super Skrull. Before he was a Super Skrull, he started in the Skrull Army. He was a renowned soldier in the Skrull Army, and for a while, he fought the good fight, but unfortunately he lost a few battles, and in their culture it's unacceptable to lose battles, and the punishment for that is you get banished from those you love, and the people he loved at the time was his wife and his baby and his child. So he was taken and separated from them and left to be banished from them until he could deem himself worthy. So one day the Emperor calls him up and says, hey, you know what? We're trying this new experiment. Figured you would be the perfect candidate to redeem yourself for it. And Kirk said, all right, I'll try it. And he did the experiment, and then it turned him into all the combinations of the Fantastic Four's powers, which happens to be Invisible Woman's force field and invisibility, and I believe it's telekinetic, and then you have the Thing's hard rock substance body, and also on top of that he have the Human Torch's indescribable fire, and Mr. Fantastic's elastic abilities. He had them all formed into one and became the Super Skrull. Now, I'm going to continue on, I guess, from this point. He fought the Fantastic Four, and he put on a good fight to a point where they actually lost. But if it wasn't for Mr. Fantastic, they wouldn't have been able to win this fight. But he found out that he was getting his powers from some sort of signal from the other realm of the Skrull's throne realm, I believe, or dimension. So he realized, I can jam the signal, and they were able to defeat the Super Skrull that way. But yeah, that's the brief origin story of Kirk, aka the Super Skrull. Now we're going to get into the powers, abilities, and feats. Alright. Trained and experienced fighter, thanks to his time in the Skrull Army. An example, he often uses these abilities in brutal and militaristic fashions, once calling the manner in which he applies them creative. Kirk also retains his Skrullan shape-shifting abilities and also has naturally strong hypnotic skills and healing factors. And that's according to the source from comicvine.gamespot.com. The Super Skrull can lift 100 tons, fly faster than Human Torch, regenerate antimatter fireballs, and have greater control over his invisibility than the Invisible Woman herself, according to www.marvel.com. Let's see, he was able, and here are the feats, he was able to punch himself out of a planet, take on Spider-Man, flatten himself on top of an asteroid, making the Thing fly with one of his punches, took on Old School Marvel and Miss Marvel before she became Captain Marvel, took on She-Hulk, threw down with Thor himself, harmed the Silver Surfer, knocked out Namor. Yeah. Alright, so let's talk about the end game when it comes to the Super Skrull strategy. Now, you got to give the Super Skrull credit where credit is due. He has a military mind, which means he has military strategies, which means he's very tactical. Fighting someone against who isn't really in military experience gives you kind of an upper advantage because you know how to strategize and take advantage or use certain things like diversions and stuff like that to keep him occupied while giving yourself some time or being able to set a trap. There's so many ways where military-based mind has a bit more of a strategy mind than a regular normal average Joe who just, doesn't really have that kind of experience. And another thing to consider is that Super Skrulls have the healing factor. So even Metamorpho, it's not going to be easy to put him down. He's got the healing factor to his favor. So even if he uses any kind of weapons to throw at him or attacks him, and he even manages to penetrate him in any kind of way, Super Skrull still has the healing factor to help him out in these type of situations. Okay, so also, if this was a preparation time, and Super Skrulls are known to study their, opponents and all that stuff, I would say that there is a possibility for Super Skrull to do his research on Metamorpho, learning about the Orb of Ra, which is one of Metamorpho's weaknesses. I believe it's his only weakness, but if he uses that and finds it, he could take it into the battlefield with him before he gets in there, and that could be his backup in case he can't actually throw down with him or really completely put him down for the count. Now, a couple of other things you got to consider is Invisible Woman's powers. I mean, he can create force fields, so anything being thrown at him is going to be impossible to go. Or maybe even if Metamorpho tries to use any kind of element, I don't believe he can get through that force field. And also, if Metamorpho wouldn't be seeing invisibility coming his way either when it comes to Super Skrull kind of using that at the last minute during a fight. Let's say he decides to turn invisible and try to run or flee, so that way he can give himself some time to recover. There is that possibility there for Super Skrull to use. So force field, visibility to his favor, and he might be able to bring an object that might be able to weaken Metamorpho. A couple points I'll also add is that the force field can provide cover against anything being thrown at him. Like, I think I mentioned it, but like, seriously, like if anything Metamorpho decides to throw that's heavy, strong, any kind of material, solid object, he might be able to dodge that. And probably the last final point I'll make for Super Skrull is that he has to make this fight a quick one. Obviously, lasting in a battle with Metamorpho would be a bad thing, a bad move, because obviously Metamorpho has a lot more elements to his favor, so Super Skrull only has like a very limited amount of weapons he could use to his disposal. So obviously at some point that's going to catch on to Metamorpho. So obviously Super Skrull, being as smart as he is, he would think strategically he needs to get this done quickly before Metamorpho can come up with more plans, especially if Super Skrull figures out that Metamorpho has all these elements to his favor, and he finds out that he might be able to out-weaken him in some kind of form or way. Super Skrull would think, damn, I got to get this done quickly, and use all the powers he's got. And I believe, and the last point I'll make is that Super Skrull has defeated way more heavy hitters than Metamorpho. I mean, Thor, Silver Surfer, I mean, he's gotten way more heavy hitters down or fought toe-to-toe with them in Spider-Man than Metamorpho has. So you can say the argument that Super Skrull's experience or his background gives him much more credibility to have likely the chance during a battlefield to get the upper hand against Metamorpho and end this fight and claiming victory. Alright, now I'll be representing on this realm DC Comics Metamorpho.
I knew you were jealous, but I never thought you'd go this far.
And now let's get into the origin story of Metamorpho. Alright, Rex Mason was an explorer, an adventurer who worked for Stag Industries. Was assigned one day to retrieve an Egyptian artifact. He gets knocked out cold and left close to a meteor, causing the radiation to absorb into his skin. The reason he was double-crossed by his employer Simon Stagg, because Stagg found out Rex was dating his daughter and wanted her all to himself. When he woke up, he discovered his body had changed. He had obtained superpowers in the process in the form of elements. And that is the brief origin story of Rex Mason, aka Metamorpho. Alright, now let's get into powers, abilities, and feats. Flight capabilities, super strong. Invulnerability, shape-shifting. Skilled martial artist. Combine elements together. Okay, here are the feats. He blasts through a giant space worm. Creates shockwaves, tunnel under the ground, take hits from Despero, I believe I said that right, thrown down with Clayface, taking hits from Planet Buster hammers, can make shields to withstand from the Eradicator. Counter Katana Soul Taker sword, can turn into a giant blanket, make 10 clones of himself, turned into a living power ring. He can turn into knockout gas, fought toe-to-toe with an OMAC. Alright, so let's talk about the endgame. With Metamorpho, you got a lot more going for you. For example, the clones. He's able to make 10 clones of himself, which means there is an infinite amount of ways, using all the elements and all the other people, all the other Metamorphos to help him take down Super Skrull in that way. And look, Metamorpho has a lot more elements to him. He's called the Elemental Man because he can do anything. He can counter anything Super Skrull has to his arsenal. I mean, he's got fire, he can counter with water. He's got rock, he can turn into anything else. He can turn steam. I don't know what he wants. He can turn anything else. He can turn into acid if he wanted to. So I do believe that Metamorpho can use multiple different types of scientific elements to put down and counter maneuver Super Skrull. It's kind of like rock, paper, scissors. You know, if he pulls out scissors, what do you call it? Metamorpho is going to use a rock. If he decides to use a paper, obviously scissors. You get what I'm saying. Pretty much, Metamorpho has a lot of ways, no matter what, to counter Super Skrull's powers in a fight. So he has a lot more going for him in this way. Another thing you can add on is the fact that he has used on several occasions the knockout gas. So let's say he didn't want to actually put him out, but he just wanted to knock him out. He could do that. He could use probably the knockout gas to breathe into his lungs and put him out completely, and then get out, and then just call that a claim victory right there if he wanted to. Now, the reason I also added that and the argument before that, you know, with Super Skrull, you need to kind of have a short fight because Metamorpho has so many elements to his favor. So long-term wise, I mean, he's kind of immortal, and so Super Skrull, but there's a certain limit to these people or a certain limit to their abilities. But with Element Man, you have so many variety of options you can go from. You can choose all these choices of elements to create in order to keep throwing at Super Skrull. At some point, one of those are going to stick, and Super Skrull is going to be doomed or worried and put into a corner and put down the count in that kind of way. Like there's because you can argue some other things like strength. Maybe Super Skrull might be stronger. We don't really know. Even so, it doesn't really matter in this instance because, again, Metamorpho has all these elements to dodge these moves, especially one particular one, which is his gas move. He can turn into gas, and that usually can dodge any kind of move that's being thrown at you. He can get hit with with fire. He can get hit with a rock. He can get hit with some kind of elastic hand. He can get hit with anything, but it wouldn't do anything because he's still gas. And as long as he turns into gas and transforms back, he can't do that. I mean, there's just so many ways where Metamorpho just has way more options to put Super Skrull down than Super Skrull has to really complete and get it done. So ultimately, I do believe when you look at all the options that Metamorpho has, and still the ability of knockout gas, the ability of using all these elements to your disposal, I do believe at some point it's going to cave in on Super Skrull, and Metamorpho is going to claim this victory. But as always, no purse fam, it's not up to me, it's up to you guys. So if you guys like my argument, you know what you can do? You can hashtag Metamorpho. But if you like my other argument, you know what you can do? You can hashtag Super Skrull. And as always, no purse fam, we really appreciate you guys. Catch you guys later. Much love, peace.